Hello, and welcome to episode 15 of the IP3 podcast. I'm Kevin, joined by both Alex and Rhea today. Uh, and today we're going to talk about punting and why it's bad and how you should avoid it. Uh,
Something you've never done before, right,
Don't
Kevin? So it's
don't
pretty
get to
foreign to
fourth
talk
down.
about.
Just
no,
don't get to fourth down.
there's not video evidence of me punting. Certainly
Yeah.
not. Um, yeah, no. So we're gonna talk through some of our punting, each of our punting greatest hits,
hmm
um, and sort of types of punts, things that specifically aren't punts that even though they could still qualify as mistakes, uh, and ways to either avoid those sorts of punts, or recover from them once you make them, right? Because punts like this that's part of the game, um, and the best players in the world are going to be able to, even if they miss something, uh, you know, stay the course, keep playing optimally, and keep making you work for the rest of that win. Uh,
Yeah. I think it's a really important topic because, everyone punts. It is an unavoidable fact of life. So it's not about, the quality of player. It's just about, how, as a player of a trading card game, do you learn to deal with this? Because it will happen at some point.
yeah, absolutely. Um, but before we dive fully into our history of punts and punting, um, meta updates. We've got 1 week of nationals events remaining. I believe the headliner for this final weekend is Canadian Nationals, which will be commentated by Ellie Bird and Brody Spurlock, which will be a delight.
I'm
Um,
so excited.
very very much looking forward to that.
I think it's
Um,
supposed to be the second biggest, right?
I mean,
Behind
it's basically a
IP3.
pro tour, right?
yeah.
That's an inside joke for the ones who get it.
Yeah. No, I mean it's definitely one of the headliners, right? I feel like when you list off the, well, I mean it's also pretty biased. It's the bigger the nationals, the more likely I guess it is to feel like it's got some heft to it. But yeah, obviously some incredible players up in Canada. Um, Canada Day was earlier this week. Fun fact.
Oh,
Today's America
interesting.
Day.
Today is America Day. Earlier this week it was Canada Day. Um,
Spoiling when we recorded this.
yeah. Uh, Tuesday night migraines. Sometimes it makes you record the morning of July 4th. Um, so going into this last week though, I think the interesting, well, the biggest shift that we've seen in the metas is new creeping up and actually outperforming Zen on Nationals wins in week 3.
Mhm.
Um, not by a huge margin, but 5-4 against a deck that sort of seemed pretty definitely top dog, is certainly worth taking note of.
I think it kind of falls into just like looking back in the history, like Lexi versus Azuri. Like me playing Lexi, I did not want to see Azuri just because all the disruption, I just couldn't get my big turns to happen. Um, but in that meta, Azuri had to deal with Dromai, which was not a good match whatsoever. And this meta, New has to deal with um, Enigma, which isn't. I don't think it's good, but it's not as hard as Dromai versus Azuri was. So I think
Yeah.
it leaves room for News to get past the gatekeeper air quotes of Enigma to be able to actually play well and disrupt Zen.
It's kind of interesting. I agree. I think we're approaching something like a triangle meta in this format. Um, Not a great look that all three corners of the triangle are the three brand new heroes from the most recent set, because roughly New beats Zen, Zen beats Enigma, Enigma beats New. But I think two sides of that are weaker. I think New can beat Enigma, and I think Zen can beat New. And I think Zen is much more favored into Enigma compared to the other two sides of the triangle. And so I wonder if the more as this meta plays out, like, yes, there's a triangle here, but Zen is still the undisputed top deck.
Yeah, Zen's definitely this format's Lexi until proven otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite uh, as dominant across the full matchup spread probably, but um,
I don't know. I saw a picture of an 83 damage turn yesterday from Zen.
right. But like
Yeah, I know.
anybody with double Roar of the Tiger and triple Art of War can do 80 damage. That's nothing. Get out of here.
Roar of the Tiger. Oh my.
Hey, that Roar of the Tiger was like 5 damage a pop, I think.
Don't let that tiger swipe hit.
Mm, mm. Uh, yeah. So I don't think there's been anything else too crazy happening, but it's definitely interesting, sort of watching the top 4 or 5 decks jockey to see what shape that triangle or triangle adjacent top of the meta shape is gonna shake out.
And then
I
you
will
just have
say,
Victor's and Dash
yeah.
just winning events as well.
I mean, Victor being the third most winning deck is the one thing that's weird to me. I still don't quite get it. I guess they're beating up Zen and they're dodging the other two corners of the triangle because they're terrible into New and Enigma, is my understanding. But I guess if you beat like all the rest of the field, that can be okay.
I do think that I feel like Victor's probably really bad into the word version of Enigma, but like the one that's running just like a bunch of like good attack actions,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Victor has a much better chance into. And then as
Yeah, for
well
sure.
as Victor's just figured out like I'm just gonna run all the go again into new and hopefully beat their face in.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and I was gonna say that the KO versus new has a similar thing where okay, cool. If you're getting disrupted and it's hurting your turns, but like your fail state turns usually are like, well, here's a 2 card 8,
Mm-hmm.
and even though news disruption is very strong, the raw card efficiency that they're doing all those disruptive plays with has a hard time keeping up with that. So maybe Victor's just able to be like, look, my numbers are solid, and on this first cycle through, I'm gonna, I'll block with my D reacts and my test of strengths and all these red cards that you're not gonna be able to do anything with for a bit. Just hope to get there on raw efficiency.
Yeah, that makes sense. Dash really close to LLing, by the way. Like really, really close.
I think that might be the most interesting development of the last weekend. I think it was what Dan Mackay in New Zealand Nationals and Hayden Dale in Australian Nationals. I think Hayden ended up top 4 and Dan ended up taking down New Zealand Nats on Dash,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not mistaken. Um, Turns out Zen uh, needs their equipment to do their crazy, powerful, busted things.
Yeah.
And T-Bone and Magnetic Shockwave are like, all right, you're gonna have to do this without any of your your cool dude toys. So
A
and
quarter of the
also
deck
yeah,
kills equipment.
Harpoon is just like,
Mhm.
that's the card you needed this turn. I'll take that. Thanks.
yeah, yeah, definitely a few very very potent tools for fending off Zen. And then I kind of suspect that the dash into new matchup is kind of similar to the KO, where a lot of your cards are redundant, and even if you lose a card per hand, you still just send your offense and play a bit more efficiently than them. And
Also, yeah, also pretty relevant that Dash, for her, all of her cards say go again on them. For New doesn't have any Mechanologist cards in her deck, so she has to find ways besides boosting to give all of those banished blue cards go again, which is boost
not
cards get
trivial.
really bad, really, really bad when they do not have native go again.
Very true. Very true. Not to mention that I mean all the blues. What there's a blue 2 for 4. That's
Mhm.
probably the best thing that you can steal out of that deck too. So
Yeah.
Techo Core seems pretty good.
all
All
right,
right. Well,
that's fair.
Techo,
That's
you got me.
the deck does in fact play at least one good quality blue. But all I know is you're not hitting me with that Tekla course, so whatever.
Mhm.
Well, cool. So yeah, so be interesting to see how things shake out this weekend. I expect it to look pretty similar results wise. Um, I expect Zen at the top, or Zen with the most wins on this final weekend, probably still. Um,
All
but
right,
And if
hold
not the
on,
most wins, the most representation.
fair.
hold on. It's hot take time. Kevin, who's winning Canadian National Championship?
I can't pick against Yuki.
Okay,
Can't.
I I'm purposely voting for Nia. He's coming off of a crawling second place. He knows Zen inside and out. I think Nia's taking it down. Alex, who you got?
I think it's somebody we haven't heard about before.
Okay.
I like it. Dark horse pick. All right. Hot take number 2 time. We
Mhm.
have a ban and suspended announcement in 4 days. Uh, First off, we'll go. What do you think is going to happen? And then also, what would you like to see?
Mhm.
I would like to see nothing changed, and I think nothing will change.
I think that's a very safe pick, very reasonable pick. Um, I think we will see. I think we're like 85% to see nothing happen. And I think we're like 15% to see Stride of Reprisal. Is that the boot name?
Mhm.
Stride
Yes.
banned, so that they can't block with it, banish a tiger to Art of War, and like essentially just have a one resource plus one. Potted Reed's a good card. Um,
Yes, it is. Especially when you get two of them.
I I want to see Stride banned, and then I think at some right now might not be the time. I don't think Zen is necessarily dominant enough to warrant this. I think at some point we have to ask ourselves: is Art of War actually an okay card? Because I think there's been like 3 or 4 or 5 degenerate aggro decks that have needed bans, and every time we ban around Art of War, but these decks are like fundamentally breaking Art of War in half to do like 30, 40 damage turns. And
I
I
think
don't know that
the
that card has a permanent home in Classic Constructed. I think it
I,
limits aggro design space a lot.
I think the cards or the heroes that like use Art of War really well and abuse it like you're talking about are the decks that get like cards in hand for free. Like for
Mhm.
example, Fi with just like being able to get a Phoenix Flame back, or Zen blocking with the boots, get an attack card back. Chain, you didn't like you just
You
banished a
were
card that you
actually
could still
throwing your
play.
card away.
So
Yeah.
like you didn't actually lose a card.
Yeah.
But like I think it was totally fair in Lexi. Yes, you could have explosive Art of War turns with Lexi, but sometimes you banish an arrow and then don't draw any more arrows, and like that's a problem.
Mhm.
Yeah. The pattern is decks that get to ignore the cost of Art of War being banishing that card somehow. Turns out Art of War is very powerful when it doesn't have an additional cost beyond one resource. Um,
And I'm not saying ban it now. I'm saying it's in the back of my mind. I want to see
that's
Strider
fair.
Reprisal banned.
I,
I want to see Stride banned.
Art of War is in my head for like the next two most likely things to happen in the LL format, in my opinion, are
Mm.
unbanning or unrestricting Channel Lake Frigid and restricting Art of War.
Please make
Uh,
Icelander playable in LO. Just give me back CLF. I don't need hypo. Just give me back CLF.
yeah, I'm on board with that change. I haven't. I think it's reasonable, especially when Belittle just also exists still. So
Mhm.
there's counterplay. Um, yeah, I think I'm pretty much in the same boat as Rhea. I think most likely no changes. I think my ideal change would be just hitting Stride of Reprisal. Takes a little bit off the top. the boot choice. Like maybe they just go back to Snapdragon scalers, or the other was pouncing paws.
Mhm.
Uh, I would like that equipment to be something that's like, hey, actually you're Zen, so do something with crouching tigers that doesn't just banish them to draw other cards. Um, I think that's the
Like it
that
would probably just become Breeze Rider boots, and that way you could run more just like random combo stuff,
true.
Could
and
be.
don't need the starter for it specifically.
Yeah, I mean, or if you're in this deck that's running so many like potentially awkward combo cards or non-starter cards, then Snapdragon Scalers could be fine. But
Mhm.
yeah, there are plenty of very reasonable options to replace it too. So also
Mhm.
it's a common, so you're not like, oh yeah, we're gonna take Traverse out of all these Mystic decks. Like no, that's a format altering, not just slight nerf. Stride only touches Zen, makes it pretty ideal ban target if anything.
Mhm.
I will say props to LSS for making common equipment like very good.
Oh,
Like
it's so
new is
cool.
also running to common equipment like in
Mhm.
constructed.
Yeah, New is playing two common equipment. Zen is playing your common equipment. Enigma is playing your common equipment. Although Illusions have kind of always done that, so that one's not so new. But
True.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
y'all's gloves
extremely cool.
historically have sucked.
It just is a feature of the Illusions class. Blood Tradition, I think, is the best so far, and it's not close. The card can actually be worth 5 value if you do a lot of work.
Yeah. All right.
All right, we're ready
One
for the next
last.
hot take.
Oh yeah. One last
One
round
last
of
topic.
hot takes before we get into our main topic. Uh, XP hot takes.
All right. I was listening to the Team Covenant does every Monday they do a live cast, and this week they were talking about like incentives or prizes for TCGs and like events, and just like through that conversation, it got me thinking like not everybody always cares about the promos, and XP is kind of just like still hanging out there as what is this for? So my hot take and argument is that bring back XP invites for qualifying for big events, or at least at minimum just like an XP goal, so that I don't know, you don't have to like I just go and play local armories because I like playing the game, but not everybody is like that. I know, Ray, I think you said that you were going to like 4 armories a week, but
Yeah,
now that
I mean, I can talk about this really personally. I used to be in the top 10 90-day XP, and I used to be in the top 50 lifetime XP. And they removed my ability to functionally earn PTIs through playing armories. And so, I can play an armory per month and get the cold foil that I want, because we've talked about this in the past. Historically, they kind of miss on the extended right rainbow foils, and I don't play rainbow foils anyways. And I support my LGSs by buying products from them, but I don't have to stay for a whole armory to do that. And so I've went from playing 4.5 armories a week to I play like 1 to 2 a month at this point, which is just like I can spend the time that I would be playing armories practicing with my friends anyways,
Or playing Elden
or
Ring.
working on content, or playing Elden Ring. And I would love a real incentive to play armories again, but I can get more better quality games practicing and testing with the team. You know, if that's the goal, like I'm not going to armories to get good practice in, because I can do that more efficiently. I'm not going to armories to socialize, because armories are fun. They're a good way to see friends you haven't seen in a while, but there are also better ways to do that typically.
also you can't
So
guarantee who all is going to be there,
yeah, you can't guarantee. Yeah. So
because I would say most of the audience of FAT is adults, and like we got random stuff that comes up.
so what is the incentive? Because even from like a business perspective, it's more efficient for the store if you just walk in and like buy some products and then leave so that you're not taking up table space for them. So I just don't see where the armory is supposed to like what is my reason to play there? I don't know. That's a very pessimistic view of it, I know, but
It's a little pessimistic, but it's also it's realistic, right? It asks the fundamental question: uh, why go to armories when you can, you know, play not at your LGS for not money, right? Like it's a weird like dichotomy of, as soon as XP is incentivized again, right? As soon as you can qualify for nationals or pro tours, or like the promos get crazy or anything like that, as soon as there's incentive to do so, people will go back to like hardcore grinding armories and getting XP. Some people still do. Respect to the grind, because beyond me. But as soon as there's a reason to do so, people will. Uh, so I wonder if the answer could be a little less tied to wins and a little more tied to games played.
okay.
There's my hot take.
So-
Sell me on this.
So it wouldn't be. I mean, XP would still exist, uh, possibly without function. But imagine, let's see, Brody Spurlock, prolific event grinder, plays constantly.
Heard
Uh,
of him?
yeah, a little reasonably well known. And when there's reason for Brody to go and be like, well, if I'm going to play a 3-round armory, I should leave with 9 XP and make sure I'm one step closer, you know, to maintaining that top 50 lifetime or whatever else. Uh, what if the invite wasn't, what if they were rewarded armory grinding but not armory crushing? Where, oh, okay, well, I went and I played, 5 3-round armories this week. So those 15 rounds that I went and played and supported my local store and didn't necessarily curb stomp the locals, uh,
Mm-hmm.
counted for something, right?
Yeah, because
If Brody gets to show up with Betsy and still be accomplishing his goal, but also gets to take it down a notch. Make sure he's enjoying himself. Well, I'm sure he always does. It's still fun even when you're crushing people, but it removes that incentive to be like, well, I'm gonna bring the tier 0 meta deck to every armory event and just wreck people.
yeah, that is a really good point. Because like my perspective is from a very competitive player, right? People do want to go to armories just to have fun, which is very valid, and I think arguably like should be the main reason to do it, right? I think a win-based system, a round-based system and not a win-based system is a really good solution to that. I wanted to look it up just for a fun fact. What do you think Brody's lifetime experience is?
11,000.
All right, well,
11,000 seems high. I was gonna say like 5 or 6.
7,461, and he is not even first place.
Jeez.
That Hong Kong crew, Kelvin Law and Eugene C, are in the 8Ks. They are insane.
I hadn't looked
So
in a
I
while. I just figured he'd hit 5 digits by now, but
Mhm.
fair.
I so I have a thought on this as well. So I read what Kevin wrote in our show notes, and it got me thinking, what if we just have two different tiers of armory? Like LSS has their OP pyramid or whatever. So what if you just have 2 tiers of armory where one of them stores can run like once a week. Maybe you geo lock them so you can't have like 10 stores in a 50-mile radius all running like events. But and you gain XP that way, and XP has like an incentive where it's like maybe every 1,000 like they send you a random gold foil, like not the legendaries but like the rare common or majestics, or like we talked about on previous podcasts, maybe every 2,000 you get a PTI or Nats invites or something that people who want to, I guess, train or like play against best players. Like, because if there's like one armory a week that like that like you could potentially win a gold foil from if you win them consistently, like you're you're gonna go to those, right, Rhea?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and then so but you're also gonna be bringing the tier 0 deck, which not everybody always wants to play against. Sometimes you just want to play Betsy. I played Riptide last week.
Okay, well, Riptide is a good deck now, so that's not actually that good of an example. But
Vincent.
Okay.
Vincent. We'll
Yeah,
there
go
you
with
go.
Vincent.
there you go.
I learned firsthand last week. Oh, Vincent needs some help.
And then you can also have just like on-demand casual events where the prizes are all completely randomized and they're the current like cold foils, extended rainbow foils, the um, play mats and such. And then you just let the store talk to their community, be like, okay, like, do you want casual randomized prizes, or like, do you all want to like play the game really hard and try to like win XP and such?
It's a cool idea that I don't think, or at least anecdotally from the stores that I've been at, I don't think Fab's player base is consistently robust enough everywhere to try and make that delineation between a casual and a more competitive armory event.
Yeah.
Even though it's a neat idea.
Yeah. We have had stores locally try something like that with a casual play night on a different day of the week from an armory, and attendance has been rough. Now, granted, that is, one anecdote. I know that there are places with thriving scenes where that probably would go really well. But I don't know if there are enough of those cases for it to be like codified by LSS as a separate option when stores can just run on-demand events whenever they want.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I'm still just in favor, yeah. Milestones that, you know, whatever increment of 1,000 it needs to be, whether it's like 1.5, or 2,000, whether it's some cool promos or maybe it is just a PTI. I think that'd be pretty cool. I also think that games played as the metric as opposed to XP could be the middle ground that sort of bridges all these gaps where grinders can grind by playing a lot, by going to a lot of armories and supporting a lot of stores, and not need to slaughter the locals in order to make it feel worth their time in terms of what they're grinding for.
Sounds like Grant agrees.
Yeah.
Thank you, Grant. I appreciate the support. All right.
So another point I want to make, sorry, real quick, is I do think you want to give like your competitive players like an incentive to go to local things, because I think that 80% of your competitive level players are the people who are going to teach the game and be ambassadors to the game the best. Like, if somebody new shows up, I know that at least in our area, like we take the time to like talk them through uh, what they should be doing, like mistakes, like, oh yeah, just like take that back, you should do this instead, and try to explain it. Which is another thing, like I think that's what the armory decks do really well. Like, oh, this person just showed up, go buy this armory deck. We can teach you how to play it in 10 minutes, and then the event will start. And like when we're playing against you, we can just like walk things back and
Turn it into a teaching experience as much
right,
as a game experience.
right.
Yeah.
All right, that's it.
So for the main topic,
Punting.
I can
we
get off
we
my soapbox now. Sorry.
we should probably start with our personal examples. I mentioned at the top of the show, everyone punts. It happens. So when did we punt the worst? Who wants to start?
I can kick us off with a doubleheader here.
All right, let's go.
The first
Okay.
one is taking Vincent to nationals, right? And then
This year, yes. Last year,
I'm
no.
kidding.
Ooh, that's brutal.
Ugh.
I
Hey,
kid.
look, deck selection punting is a type of punting we'll talk about later, and yes, that qualifies. All right, so my biggest punts. It's sort of a two-parter because I did it in back-to-back rounds at PT1. I was 10-1-1 and in fifth place, and all I had to do was win either one of these last two rounds, and I was locked for top 8.
Mhm.
So I'm actually going to do the round 14 one first, because that was more apparent and on camera and haunted me more in the short term. So round 14, I got paired into Jacob Shaker. I was playing Chain. Jacob was playing Briar. Uh, we were having an all-out aggro match. I had played this matchup 2 rounds earlier against Chris Ayali, and drew absolute gasoline and sort of just blew the doors off of him. Runic Reclamation's a hell of a card. This game was a little was going my way initially, until it wasn't. I had a double-digit life lead, heading into what I felt was going to be approximately the last turn cycle of the game, and I underestimated just how true that was, by not blocking a Force of Nature powered uh, Entwine Lightning for 5 with Go Again. So Force of Nature plus Entwine Lightning above its base power means that was threatening to draw a card. So I'm staring at a hand that, by my calculations, I was going to send like 22 to 23 damage back if I just held my grip. I had some equipment left. I'm like, I think I can just weather the storm. Like I basically decided that I didn't think that the card drawn there was gonna cascade badly enough that it was gonna, lead to horrendous things. And I was very wrong. Uh, so I let the Entwine Lightning hit, and a card was drawn. I don't remember what order things were drawn in, but basically that card draw fueled their following attack, which was an E-Strike for 7, which they had Snapdragon Scalers for. So threatening to draw an additional card. Once you don't block the 5 threatening to draw a card, you don't block the 7 threatening to draw a card, because it's the same thing but even worse. So I take 5 and then I take 7. And I think the card drawn off of Enlightened Strike was Revel in Runeblood. Snapdragon Scalers gave the E-Strike Go Again, so the Earth Blue they fused the Force of Nature with to begin with, pitched for a Rune Chant, and then they reveled and swung an extra 9 with 5 Rune Chants, and then Rosetta for 2 and 2, which made me give up a card and the last of my equipment, and I was just at 1, and so Husk was already burnt. So if I didn't kill Jacob on that turn, then I just die, and that's what happened. So I actually wrote an article where I went through this game like turn by turn and actually listed out a few different like suboptimal decisions I made throughout. But aside from the things that led to this point in the game, my punt in this match was just basically just underestimating, the threat of the opponent's cards, right? Like that sequence of cards is borderline perfect in that scenario, and the amount of damage it threatened was very inconvenient for me. But like there's also a world where, oh cool, I drew a second Earth Blue card, and the follow up is a terrible arsenal and not quite enough to threaten to kill me. But that's not what happened. I underestimated it and got maximum punished, and it cost me a top 8 in a PT. So that one haunted me for a little while. The one that actually haunts me more now. I didn't even like think about this until 6 months after the PT. Round 13, I was playing against eventual top 8 competitor William Kubik. He was playing Prism. I had a terrible rough start to this game because he saw a bunch of ALSs early. This was Chain versus Prism, obviously. Uh, I was clawing back into this game and clawing back, and I'd like taken a bit more damage than you normally do in the Chain versus Prism matchup. Uh, on a late turn, when I finally had taken all the cards, pushed a good amount of damage, was finally onto the front foot. The last card in my hand for this turn cycle, I didn't have any Blood Debt to banish with it, so the last card I had was Soul Reaping, and I'm like, ooh, this is a popper. Do I just hold this and make sure that I can pop with Soul Reaping? I'm like, the power level on this card is so absurd. I have other poppers. I still have some armor left. I'm just going to Arsenal it. So I Arsenal my Soul Reaping, and I draw up. And William's turn is swing with a Herald for 7 or 8. And then threaten a shield afterwards, I think. Spectral shield attack. And I'm staring at a hand that's got, a couple attacks, a couple blues, and an Art of War. I'm like, didn't draw a popper. I think my attacks were 2 blocks, so just not a good hand for fending off a Herald. And I go,
Kevin, there's a.
Oh, huh?
I hear there's a 4th line on Art of War, which you might be alluding to here.
Yes, I am. So there's a 4th line on Art of War that says you may block with attack actions from your arsenal this turn. Well, I had been playing Chain for 13 rounds, and let me tell you how many times I gave half a shit that there was a 4th mode on that card. 0. Actual 0.
I think I would wager that probably that line of text was used 0 times in that entire Pro Tour, if I had to bet.
Very possible. Very possible. So I'm like, this isn't great. I can dig for it though, and if I defensive Art of War, I had E-strikes in the deck. I'm like, I can either draw into a popper, or at least buff the defense, and I'll block with 2 cards and move on with my life. So I Art of War, banishing a non-Blood Debt, draw up 2 more cards, and I draw, I think it was a Belittle and another Art of War. And I'm like, this is so obnoxious. It's fine, I'll just do a second defensive Art of War, because when I buff the power, now all my 4 power attacks in the deck are poppers, which is the mode that my brain is in. So I Art of War defensively a second time, and I buff power, and I banish another non-Blood Debt card, and I draw 2 more cards, and I end up with a hand that has like blue Shrill, blue Vexing Malice, and a non-attack action. So I block with one of those for 5, take a slight hit, get hit with a shield, use the last of my equipment, and because Husk was already down, that was basically just, I was on the ticking time clock there, and couldn't close it in time before I ticked out. But if I remember that Art of War has a 4th mode, and block with the Soul Reaping out of Arsenal, I pretty much just win the game on the spot.
Oh.
Yep.
Oh.
So I literally 6 months after the Pro Tour, I woke up at 4 a.m. having had a dream about this game, and in that dream, I realized my mistake with the 4th mode on Art of War. And I'm like, oh my god, I just had I felt like I regularly just didn't play quite my best and punted the game, generally speaking. But to realize 6 months later that I full sent a real punt of literally not playing with 100% of the information written on my own cards. That one, at this point, that one stings a lot more than the no blocks into Mr. Jacob Shaker.
Yeah. Very understandable.
You know what else stings, Kevin?
What stings,
Mine.
Alex?
Okay, let's go, Alex. We're just telling bad beat stories at this point. This
Look,
is great.
Yeah.
it's our podcast. If they don't want to hear this, go somewhere else.
Yeah,
These
just
are our
skip
bad
forward.
beats.
Just like and subscribe first.
Yeah.
All right. So, Nats 2023. I'm playing Dromai in the Lexi meta.
Mhm.
Playing against Alexi in around 12 maybe. I can't make top 8, but if I win out, then I get top 16.
Mhm.
So my Lexi opponent definitely thought that I was on the big dragon version, trying to fatigue and grind them out. They brought in like Quiver of Abyssal Depths, and I saw them pitch multiple remembrances, and they were running a fast stack of cards, probably like 72, 75, something like that. Um, but that is not the version of Dromai that our crew brought to Nats. Ours was like very aggressive, snatch, promise of plenty, premeditate, all the good cards. Um,
Promise of Plenty and Premeditate. Those are some deep cuts right there.
yeah, that's the way Team Eclipse whirls. Um, I will not go through the whole game, but basically we get to the end game where they're very shocked by my deck. I've played all of my CNCs against them. Um, just like taken 15 damage to just like play dragons and attack and then them get popped, which I'm perfectly fine with. Basically, I have a board, a thunder of dragons, if you will,
A
uh,
Thunder of Dragons.
including Chromai, Azvali, probably like 7 Ashwings, just like probably I think a Yendurai too. Just like we get to the point where my opponent is at 1. They just use Bullseye Brace as a turn 4. They have no Arcane Barrier. Asvali wins the game. Chromai, even if they have a Popper, wins the game. I draw my hand, all reds, fantastic hand. And I'm thinking, oh wow, there's no, like, I just need to play this Ravenous Rabble. It's going to hit a red because my whole deck is reds. And then I'll be able to just, like, take all their cards and win the game. Cool. My opponent plays an arrow, and I have seen already in the game that they are playing Red Lightning Press. They've played 2 of them, I think, at this point. And I am at 3. I block the arrow for Xaxes. I don't need all the cards in my hand. I can block for 9 and still win the game with my Ravenous Rabble and then all of the dragons that are already on the board. But I just like go too quick. In my head it's like, oh, I have this game won. So I just block 5 on 5 and then they play Lightning Press and I die. And I just, yeah, that's one that I will not forget. They were definitely expecting a Sink Below or a Sigil or something because they just like played it, and then I just sat there. It's like, yep, I just lost this game that I had won for sure.
Oh. Okay. I'm gonna
Next,
attempt to one up both of y'all. So we had Nats, we had Pro Tour. So I want to take you back to November 4th, 2022. This is day 1 of the first ever Flesh and Blood World Championship in San Jose, California. Get off to a hot start. I 3-0 draft with Icelander. I'm the only Icelander in the pod. I play 5. I'm playing Icelander in CC. I play 5. I win. I play 2 old hymns in a row. I win. I'm 7 and 0. I play Bravo on stream. I win versus the I think Singapore National Championship Gordon Coe. National champion. Round 8. I'm playing Rob Catlin at table 1 for first seed going into day 2. He's on Phi. He's on AB1 Phi. I'm playing Icelander, and specifically like my weirdo arcane Icelander build, which I will never forget that deck. And Rob starts so unbelievably hot. I think in the first 6 turns of the game, he sees 5 out of his 6 belittles in his deck, including hitting one off of the top, off of a torrent of tempo, which was just like the most disaster lucky moment ever.
Oh, take the
But
tempo?
take the tempo,
Take the
yeah,
tempo.
sorry. Take the tempo. And I'm starting to get frazzled. I know that I have to survive at this point because I'm like down 20 life. So he leads his next turn with a yellow belittle, and he still has Master the Pouncing Leaps available, and I'm at like 15. And I just start thinking to myself, like, I have to start denying Mast here, or else he's going to just run me over. And so on the first chain link to this turn, I pick up my Coronet Peak and I set it in front of this yellow belittle, which, we'll talk about this in a second, is completely throwing away my overarching game strategy of lock my opponent down with CLF plus Coronet Peak and don't let him do anything as I chip Arcane. And I essentially lose on the spot once I lock that block in, because I now, for the rest of the game, don't have an efficient way to keep CLF alive when I finally do find it, because I was having issues drawing it in that game. And I've watched that match back a couple of times, and it's just every reality that I look at it, it's just like, this is just objectively the wrong choice. And I got in my own head about it.
I think we watched that in the hotel room.
We
like,
watched it back that
night,
when
and we
did
were
it
like,
come
"Oh no!"
Yeah. So I punted away the day 2 first seed of Worlds. Who knows what happens if that game goes different? Who knows? But that's the one that haunts me, and I will never forget it.
Yeah, none of us had to write any of these down, because when you have a true punt, it just lives in your brain.
Stays right here, yeah,
years.
forever.
All right, should we talk deeper about like types of punts, things that aren't actually punts?
Yeah. So, and also credit where it's due. The original inspiration for this episode was from a punting topic episode of Arsenal Pass from about 6 months ago that I thought was just really solid conversation. So, highly recommend that episode if you haven't seen it before. But we're talking about some of the same things here. But so the definition of a punt is interesting because a mistake or a wrong decision does not necessarily equal a punt. And there's some situations where it ends up in a bit of a gray area where it's like, okay, so it's a little borderline. But when I think of punts, I think of wholly preventable mistakes that just unforced errors on your own part. Um, forgetting that Art of War has a highly relevant fourth mode in a key situation. Missing onboard combat tricks, right? Like, forgetting that News got undertow stilettos ready to do a thing, or anything where the information's not hidden; it's literally on the board in front of you. Sequencing errors, right? If you're playing a deck where that sequencing is very important, a la old chain, it was very very important when people would play. If Guardians tried to fatigue you and they're playing Rampart of the Ram's Head or Phantasmal Footsteps, sequencing was extremely important because lazy sequencing lets them get multiple points of value off of one resource invested defensively, sometimes even more. So not throwing out your non-attack action before you lead on belittle and then being able to attack multiple times without breaking the chain was a really important thing to know to work towards. In PT1 I played Padeshki in a game that ended up in a draw, and I know I gave up at least a point or two of value in that game due to just poor sequencing that let him get some extra value off of Rampart. Forgetting what your own cards do, I think that one's probably pretty self-explanatory. Or forgetting that you have an out or a way to achieve something, especially when it's your own cards.
Forgetting that you've already seen 2 lightning presses, and that's the only card in their deck that will let them win the game.
Yep.
Forgetting you're not thinking about cards that your opponent could or be playing. Reckless Swing, Sigil of Suffering, the blowout cards.
Right. Um, just straight up math errors. Not, sometimes you add up 5 and 2 and think it's 8, and it's not.
I mean, did you see the equation that Tarek Patel posted on Twitter about like the average EV of Scabskin leathers? It's an equation that you have to do in your head in the middle of the game that has like an addition, a subtraction, a multiplication, and 2 exponents in it. It's like, good luck. Good luck doing that
No.
math.
We roll scabs
And
by vibes
arriving.
here.
Yeah. Well, I think there are some very real situations where the math can definitely lead you to a punt like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or sometimes they're a little more. Punts can be a little more nebulous or indirect. So we alluded to earlier, me taking Vincent to U.S. Nationals 2024 was a deck selection punt. Because outside of getting incredibly lucky or opposing Zens getting extremely unlucky, that is just not a matchup that I'm going to win, which makes that deck choice a pretty shit idea into, what was not, we were not surprised by the Nats meta, so, that didn't catch me off guard. Admittedly, I knew I couldn't go to Worlds regardless, so the invite was a little less appetizing. But, like, if my goal was absolutely do as well as possible, win US Nats, bringing Vincent would have been a punt. If your goal is fun, play what you want, because this game's great.
It's also
Or,
a reasonable goal.
huh?
That's a reasonable goal.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
Were you gonna say something, Rhea?
No, go ahead.
And then the other the final type of punt that we identified that Rhea alluded to earlier, is again a little more nebulous, but specifically sort of abandoning your game plan, right? Like knowing the difference between playing to win versus playing to not lose.
Yes.
Conserving
Exactly.
2 health by throwing Coronet Peak in front of a Belittle is playing to not lose. It's not playing to win.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's
I
possible
think
that
there's a lot. Go ahead.
it's possible that if you don't block with Cornet Peak, Rob breaks the mask and just blows you up that turn. That's possible, but like that doesn't play into your how you know that you can win the game. So even though you may end up still losing that game, you gotta play to win.
Yeah, I think abandoning your game plan, abandoning your macro strategy is something that's easy to not think about. But there's a lot of matchups where it's relevant. So like fatigue, setting out to fatigue boost dash, or historically playing Prism into Chain, where you start the game like, I am going to fatigue you, I'm going to fatigue you, I'm going to fatigue you. And you see their deck start to get a little bit thin, or you see them take a little bit of blood debt, and you start to smell blood in the water, and you look at your hand and you're like, yeah, this hand can attack for 14. Why don't I just attack? And then you throw away your macro game plan, and suddenly the game slips away from you. Similarly, if you're playing Iceland Defy and your entire win con is keeping Channel 8 Frigid alive with Coronet Peak, and you block a Coronet Peak early before you see your first Channel 8 Frigid, you are essentially giving up on your primary strategy to win the game. It's been said time and time again, just because it's true. Play to win, don't play to not lose.
Yeah, and just in case you thought the only times that I ever punted were in those couple games in PT1, very much not true. Sequencing errors. I've had sequencing errors playing against Prisms in both Living Legend Battle Hardens because
Yeah.
I'm real rusty on my chain end games, and so
You play
like
Revel first, and then you activate Grasp of the Arcanite, pitching 2 cards.
yeah, that's it. I think I just like each time I like one of them I burned an action point that I didn't need to because I was already gonna have go again or something. Like I wasted an Art of
Mhm.
War go again. And another one I just like uh, I put a time snap potion into play and I'm like, cool, here's my insurance for an ALS. And then when I was uber popping off, I didn't think about the fact that I could just break that and just send more damage once we were sort of clear of the ALS. Um, my my known information mistake was round two of Worlds in Barcelona. I was playing. I was Vincent. I was 1-0. I was playing against Azalea, and it ended up being my game to lose, and I messed it up. I was getting hit with a dominated red in the ledger for just 5. I could block for 4 and stay alive and be under riddle. And the line that at some point when I was evaluating this game state, I was like, ooh, their gloves are gone. They have no more arcane barrier because this was a new Horizon Azalea. And I'm like, blood in the water. All I have to do is make a second rune chant and send anything, and I win the game. And while thinking through the permutations of these lines, I lose sight of the trees for the forest and stop accounting for the fact that I'm going to be riddled this turn. Like it will happen. I can only do one action. So instead of blocking, staying alive, and sending a rune chant and a widespread destruction and taking at least 3 cards or at least 4 total cards of the 5 from this Azalea, I get to my turn. Fortunately, at least remembered that I was riddled before I activated Grasp of the Arknight, and instead I send 1 and 4 and leave them with 3 cards instead of 1, and that just snowballed and killed me. Tragic.
Uh,
Vin said at
I
that Worlds was not a punt. Eat
yeah, I
drum ice for
definitely
breakfast.
I have been there, done that with forgetting what your cards do. Um, Stormstrider. I'm gonna go back to Icelander because it's just like all of my highs and lows are with Icelander. Stormstriders has to be a wizard card. You cannot Stormstride in Channel Lake Frigid.
Thank God.
The issue is if you break Stormstriders and then you have no legal targets, guess what? You already broke
They
Stormstriders.
gone.
They are
Of course.
done.
All right.
All right.
So, oh, go ahead, Alex.
I was also going to I was also going to move us
Yeah.
along to things that aren't punts but may feel like it if they end up losing you the game. Like having 2 choices and no way to know which one is better, and then you make a choice and it turns out that just by the context of what they had in their hand, the other line would have been better. That's not that's not a punt because there's no way for you to know which one is better. You're just kind of running the odds, um, or you going through and seeing that you have 1 out to win a game, like draw a popper off of your like defensive art of war or whatever, and like it's just not happening. Like that's not a punt, even though like you may still lose the game because of that play.
If Art of War only had 3 modes, my play would not have been a punt. It would have just been unlucky.
Yeah, you gotta, like we said earlier, you have to make plays to win the game, even if they end up losing you the game.
at at Worlds round 4 in Barcelona, I was playing against a Bravo. I had like a 40 damage ish pop off turn to get a slight life lead, and I'm trying to chip away towards the end. It's like 1-2 in this really late game stage, and I'm like, they had an arsenal, they had pummel resources, and I'm like, I can stay alive through this pummel, but if I do that, I'm just like banishing nothing and saying go and giving Bravo a full grip with with me having no pressure. And so sneeze a single dominate, I die no matter what. And so I took the line where like I die. I was like, if you have a pummel right here, I die, and if you don't, I'm gonna look like a genius when I swing 11 damage with 2 breakpoints on my turn. Uh, and so I put like 1 card and a reduced to rune chant in front of this attack. Uh, which was slight overkill. And I'm like, I think I could have lived through a blue pummel, but it was a red pummel and I died. But even though I made that decision, it's not like, oh, I made a mistake, I didn't play around this pummel. It's like, no. If I tried to fully defend this pummel, A, they don't play it and just do it next turn, and B, I present nothing and lose the game anyways. But the way I did it, if I survived that moment, uh, tell me, how do you best block 4 rune chance and 7 physical damage when you're at 2?
Uh, with the fabled green card that hasn't come out yet that pitches for 4 resources.
Exactly. So it was the right play. It killed me, but it wasn't a punt.
I think your Art of War joke about like if it only had 3 lines it wouldn't be a punt is actually really relevant, and this is especially prescient now that Zen is the best deck in the format. Picking your spot to block with Strider Reprisal and Art of War and Banish a Tiger, and then you're unhappy with the cards that you drew off the top, is a feels bad, but it's not a punt. And so like that's an example of where like making a choice and then being on the low end of the variance doesn't necessarily equate to punting. You do genuinely just get unlucky sometimes.
Sometimes you say, I got to make you have it in this moment. And if they have it, you lose.
Yeah.
And if they don't have it, you look like a genius for not playing around something.
Yeah.
So obviously, everybody punts. Punting sucks. It's not fun. If there was a tried and true way to figure out how to completely and for all time avoid punting, we would patent it and sell the secret to everyone because it's no fun when you punt. But that's part of the game. The frustrating part with punting is that they can frequently cascade because as soon as you catch that first punt, it's important and sometimes very difficult to not, have your mental game shaken up a little bit by the mistake you made. But
Mhm.
the most important thing after a punt is to not throw good money after bad, right? Like, oh, I made this mistake. I guess I just shouldn't, I'll IP myself instead of looking like a fool and doing something slightly inefficiently on the next attack or something, right? You saving face to not like expose your punt to your opponent is not going to help you win that game any more than making the next most optimal play you have after your punt is done. Um, that the quote unquote easy answer for how do you avoid punting is, well, walk through your sequencing very sometimes very explicitly if you have to. Sometimes people gotta like say things out loud to like sort of etch it into their brain, uh, or run through it a couple times, make sure that the math works, that sort of stuff.
When
Um,
Kevin's playing a hero with Snapdragon Scalers and he's gonna Snapdragon Scalers, he just picks it up and just holds it in his hand. It's like, yes, this is public that I'm gonna do this, but I'm not gonna forget.
it is so much worse if I start to write down damage and haven't picked up this card yet. So I'm like, it is more devastating that I would miss it than that it's going to happen. Also, Snapdragon Scalers pretty frequently is sort of face up anyways, so. Um,
You mean you're not leading your turn with E-Strike draw and just passing with 3 cards in hand? That's crazy.
yeah, crazy. Um,
I do think there is one way to play around or avoid punting that's kind of the opposite of that. If you are comfortable with things like remembering your snaps, playing with a poker face could be really valuable. I mean, we saw that to the extreme in the Calling Hartford finals. You'll watch Mark Morrison, who every turn cycle will pick up his deck. He'll deal out 4 cards face down, and he'll set his deck down, and he'll just stare at his opponent. Just be like, I don't need to look at my hand until you make a game action. And that way, he just literally does not bleed any information, and it helps him wait until it is the appropriate time to make decisions, which means that he doesn't get ahead of himself locking in lines that end up punting away an incorrect play.
And he always does that, not just calling finals.
And he
Yeah.
always does that, yeah.
Yep. Sometimes he grabs a 5th card, but
Wow.
we call the judge and try and fix that as soon as possible.
But yeah, you were Just remember that your opponent knows a lot less about you and your deck than you think that they do, because they don't know what 80 cards you brought, and they don't know your tendencies, whatever. You've been playing with you for a long time. They haven't been.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the other things you can do to help avoid punting. Obviously, a lot of people play games on Talishar, on TTS. Uh, Playing physical games with the cards to get the dexterity of what you're going to be doing down is uh, it is a real factor, right? Like knowing what playing the deck feels like. It sounds a little silly to say, but it's a lot different when you're trying to manage a Prism board state in paper versus on Talishar or anything like that. So
Also, it's just better.
also
Tune
that
into one.
It's just better in every way.
Start a turn, tick up tunic. Start a turn, tick up tunic. Start a turn, tick up tunic.
Vincent has cured me of forgetting Tunic.
Yeah, I bet.
It's just like, okay, cool,
Two
start of turn. I
mandatory
have
triggers.
2 things I have to do.
Mhm.
Never forget Tunic anymore. But yeah, so good practice reps, real practice reps with a deck. Thinking through the line, thinking through it again, making sure that you're not discounting a very key on hit effect that your opponent might be striking you with. Uh, you know, but it's a balance, right? Thinking about a turn very thoroughly is how I forgot that I was staring at a red in the ledger. Versus, uh, not to say that thinking more quickly and less thoroughly is necessarily good, but it's an acquired skill. You have to flex these muscles in order to uh, work out the kinks that lead you to punting.
TLDR, play perfectly, which no one can achieve. Everyone will punt, but you definitely can reduce the frequency of your punts.
And
All right.
practice the mental game. Oh no, I punted. Cool. Now I need to play perfect from here on out. And if I can still win this game, awesome.
Anybody got anything else?
I think I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you for watching and listening. If you have ever punted in your life like this,
This is an
and if you haven't,
invitation for your bad beat stories. Put
Yeah,
that
there
in
you
the
go.
comment section.
Yeah.
Please.
We want to hear
tell us.
about your bad beat stories. One per person. Limit one per customer.
More than one, we're sending it back.
It's true.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks. We'll catch you next time.
Catch you later.